guys, it's
Cam.
and Katie. Welcome back to our channel. I'm American.
I'm from Ireland.
And we're currently living here in Spain.
Where our little daughter was just born.
Yes, and we want to share my unmedicated birth story with you today. I watched a billion of these videos before I went into my birth story, and it was very helpful for me. I just want to put a disclaimer out there that as long as your baby comes into this world healthy and safely, that's all that matters. My story just so happens to be unmedicated, and I watched a lot of these before I went into an unmedicated birth, and it helped me a lot. And even if you're not planning to go into birth with no medication, it's just helpful to listen to people's birth stories because they're all different, and it just helps you think of the possibilities of what could happen.
Yeah.
So I hope you find this helpful. So our daughter's due date was on August the 23rd, and we really wanted her to come on that date because my birthday is on May 23rd, my mom's September 23rd, and our lucky number is 23. It didn't happen to be that way. It didn't happen on the 23rd, but
she was a couple hours late.
She was a couple hours late. So my birth story starts on the 21st of August. I was having Braxton Hicks contractions that day. Not too many, but I definitely was having them. If you're unfamiliar with Braxton Hicks contractions, they're basically painless sensations of the uterus that just show you you're going into labor, and they're preparatory stages for your birth. So I was experiencing them, but I didn't think I was too close to giving birth or anything. But then on the 22nd, I was having multiple contractions, Braxton Hicks contractions, every single hour. So I felt this could be happening. I don't think it will be today or tomorrow, but I'm definitely progressing. So anyway, because we wanted her to be born on the 23rd, after a long day hanging out with our families, we decided to say a prayer that she would come the next day. Be careful what you pray for, because about an hour later, I had my first real contraction.
That's crazy.
And then I had another contraction 10 minutes later, another contraction another 10 minutes later. And I was trying to get some sleep because we knew within a matter of hours we needed to go to the hospital. They tell you to wait because odds are they're going to send you home. So we kept waiting, but then I was having contractions about every 8 minutes. So
it was crazy. And
they were very, very strong, very painful. So just to be safe, we went to the hospital.
Yeah. In all the preparatory videos we watched, they were like, oh, your first few contractions will be like an hour or two apart, a couple hours, get some rest in between. And Caitlin's like right off the bat were like 10 minutes apart, then and then like shortly after start being 8 minutes apart. And I was like, this is happening like so fast. This is insane. So I remember saying to Caitlin, like, do we go to the hospital? Because obviously we knew they send people home if you go too early. So we're like, do we go now? And Caitlin was like, yeah, these are like intense, so we should go.
Yes. I was a bit emotional that evening because we didn't get a lot of sleep throughout that month because our family was in town and we were going to bed every single night at around midnight or 1 a.m.
Sometimes later.
Yeah, so my first tip would be get your rest leading up to birth. I definitely did not do that, and I wish I had because it just made it harder for me to get through those painful contractions. I was restless and I just felt miserable. So anyway, definitely get your rest. And then second tip is to have your hospital bags packed. We didn't know when we were going to go into labor that month. And that moment we made the decision to go, it was so nice to not have anything to think about. Everything was already by the front door, packed, ready to go. So we could just pick up that car seat. We could not believe we were bringing the car seat to the hospital. So we just basically picked up our bags, the car seat, ran to the car, and we rushed to the hospital.
Yeah.
So because we're using the public healthcare system here in Spain, we had to wait about maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah, right when we got there, they took all Caitlin's vitals, just checked everything real quick, and then said, okay, wait here for a few minutes.
Yeah, so then they went and we had to both get a COVID test, which is awful to be swabbed while you're having contractions. But believe me, the swab's nothing compared to the contractions. So I handled that like a champ.
Yeah.
So they checked the baby's heartbeat, my contractions, how frequent they were and how strong they were. And then they checked my dilation, which the first time you have your dilation checked is so painful, even compared to contractions. It was so painful. They stick their hand up there, very painful. But anyway, they told me I was only 1.5 centimeters and you have to be 10 to start giving birth. So anyway, I felt very discouraged because I was having such frequent, strong contractions, enough where they said, you need to stay here because your contractions are so frequent and strong. But really, if they weren't, we'd send you home because your dilation's just not far along.
So bear in mind,
very frustrating.
At this point, I was waiting in a waiting room for Caitlin. She was in with the nurses. It was quite a confusing time. Yeah, we were like, it just didn't make sense. So anyway, they admitted Caitlin and they said, okay, we're going to bring you guys up to a room. And Caitlin just kind of had to wait it out from there on.
So tip 3, prepare to not be progressing, because even if you're experiencing a lot of contractions and they're very painful, you could be in the hospital for several hours like we were.
And especially if it's your first baby, that's what they kept telling us.
And have those expectations, especially for your first baby. So anyway, hours and hours were passing, and eventually I was having contractions every 6 minutes.
They said that they weren't going to check her dilation again until she was about 4, preferably every 3 minutes, right? So we were up in a waiting room, and we had our own room in the hospital, which was really nice, our own private room. So Caitlin was in the bed and I was on the chair.
With gorgeous lake views. We were so blessed. Yes,
we'll put a picture right here. We have beautiful views over the pink lake where we live.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Caitlin just had to sit in bed all day and just grin and bear it. And bear in mind, like she said, it was unmedicated. So she just had to go through these hours of contractions and just take everyone as they came. Yeah. So shortly after we went up to the room, they started being about every 6 minutes. Then they're every 5 minutes. Then they started to get to almost every 4 minutes, sometimes 5. And this was around maybe 4 or 5 p.m. So we got to the hospital at around 5 a.m. And this is around 5
12
p.m.
hours later.
And so I called the nurse. We had a little phone in our room for the nurse. And I called her and I said, look, her contractions are really strong. Like, she's really struggling. Can you check her dilation? That she could be progressed. And they said, no, until she's 4 minutes, exactly 4 minutes, we're not going to check.
So while we were waiting for that, we were watching some shows on his phone. He was
trying to distract
cuddling
her.
me, trying to help me. Then I would just pop off the bed and be pacing back and forth. My tip number 4 I want to share is something I learned was to bring lavender oil with you, which helped me so much. I put it on my pillow. I would hold it under my nose during a contraction. It really did help to calm me and to focus on something other than the pain. So I used that. And then tip number 5, I brought lollipops. You're not supposed to eat before your birth, and I was pacing back and forth with a little lollipop, and that just helped me. It soothed me. It's like a baby sunken on a pacifier. It really did help. It really did. I went through several lollipops that day.
And then I would say, on your behalf, tip number 6 is probably your breathing techniques.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Actually, if we could go back and put that as number 1, I would say this number 6 is the most important. We practiced these breathing techniques like crazy way before, like a month before we went into the hospital. And he would remind me of my breathing techniques, breaths that just help you not tense up, because when you tense, I promise you, your contractions are going to be so much worse. Definitely look up videos on that. I won't get into that here. I kind of want to just describe my contractions for you because I didn't know about this before I went into labor. I had something called thigh contractions. I've never heard of that. Out of the billions of videos I felt like I watched, I had never heard of thigh labor. Basically, it's this burning in your upper thighs that shoot down your legs. I couldn't even feel the pain in my uterus and my lower back. It was that bad. So we had brought a massage gun. He had prepared massages for my lower back because we heard about back labor like crazy. There was nothing I could do to soothe those pains but pace back and forth. Even the massage gun, I jammed it into my legs one of the times because it was hurting so bad, and it just, nothing would help but moving with the contractions, just kind of brisk walks with my contractions. But odds are that won't happen to you. Never heard of that in my life, but my contractions just so happen to happen in my thighs. I don't know why.
And if I can throw in a little tip for any birthing partners, as I was called.
Yeah, you were.
I think it's important. Like, it was really hard for me that day to just watch Caitlin go through constant pain, like every few minutes. And like, especially with how tired she was, like she mentioned, like Caitlin barely had any sleep. She was really tired, and she just, every time she would start to fall asleep, a contraction would come again. So it was actually really hard for me to watch her go through this. So if there's any husbands out there or partners who are getting ready to go through this experience with their wives, be prepared for what's to come, and like, make sure that you're very patient and that you just let the woman just do what she needs to do, because I think that, you know, sometimes I have this natural thing where I want to help Caitlin, I want to like take stuff away from her, I want to ease her issues, and there was just nothing I could do. I just had to sit there. And so for me, it was just about like finding ways that distracted her, finding things that helped her, but also being very aware of feedback. Like if Caitlin said to me, no, don't do that, or no, that doesn't help me, like don't get offended. Yeah, because like, you know, like they're going through something that we'll just never understand. It's like one of the most miraculous but painful experiences ever. So we had a full day of that. I had a full day of just watching Caitlin go through all these contractions. Slowly her contractions are getting closer and closer together.
Finally we got to I think it was about every 3 minutes.
It was
by the
just
time.
Under 4 minutes. Yeah, it was starting to get closer to 3 when they finally said, okay, we'll check her. Now bear in mind that was at about 7:30 p.m.
Oh my goodness.
So it was a long day, full of contractions, full of pain, full of discomfort, a lot of just sitting around and waiting. So definitely, that's one of the things that we weren't
sitting
expecting.
around waiting for him, pacing back and forth for me.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So finally, at about 7:30, they said, okay, we're going to check her. She's about just under 4 minutes apart in contractions, we'll check her. So they took her down. I had to wait in the waiting room because where they took her to, I couldn't go. And we received the very sad and upsetting news that Caitlin was only 2 centimeters dilated.
Oh my goodness, you guys.
So after that whole day, after all we've just described, she had only dilated by another half a centimeter.
I'm
which
exhausted.
Is like
yes.
This much.
Tiny. The reason why it was even worse, again, was I had no sleep. So I was awake for all these contractions, plus I hadn't slept since the day before that. I had no nights of sleep.
Yeah.
So I was just exhausted. But that was definitely the hardest news for sure.
So then you came back up when they told us you were at 2, and they said we're going to have to wait again. And again, the contractions were just getting even stronger. And even now, bear in mind, they told us that we'd stay in because her contractions were so strong, even though she was only 1.5 centimeters. So by 8 p.m. that night, you can only imagine how strong they were. So anyway, you came back up around 8 p.m. And then by about 9:30 or 10, it was so bad. Like you were in so much pain. They were so quick. And I called the nurse again. I said, look, I know she was just down there, but like this is a lot. Because again, like you just don't know what to expect. You don't know how it goes. So I just said, like, look, this is a lot. Like, is there any chance you can check her again? Like, you know, how long do we have to wait? So finally that was at about 9:30 or 10, about 2 hours after you came back. Finally at about 10 or 11, someone finally came to take you down for another check. They take Caitlin down, right? The last time she went down a few hours earlier, she was only at 2, so we had no idea what to expect. Again, I had to wait in the waiting room, and I wait about 45 minutes, and finally a nurse comes out. And I said, what's going on? Has she progressed any more? And they said, yeah, she's progressed some more. We're going to keep her down here now. We're not going to send her back up to the room. So I thought, okay, that's good. But again, I didn't know how much. So anyway, they took me in, and Caitlin was in it was kind of like a waiting room, I guess. If you're in labor, there's like multiple little stalls and there's just a curtain, and basically it's where the women wait in their labor, their later stage of labor, before they go to give birth. So Caitlin was in this little tiny stall. Her bed was just barely in there. There's just a little curtain covering her, and they brought me in there and they explained to me, and again, a lot of this was in Spanish for us, so that was quite a challenge.
Oh, most of it was, the whole time, which is very hard as an English speaker when you're in labor. You're just like, I have no idea. You
can't focus on Spanish at that time. So anyway, so they explained to me, they said, look, she's at 5 centimeters, she's progressed, hopefully it'll continue to just speed up from here, but she's just going to have to wait it out again. And so at this point, Caitlin was in so much pain, and like I was with her, so I was holding her hand, and I was able to watch the monitor that tracked her contractions. And literally there were some contractions that were going like off the chart. That's how intense they were. And so Caitlin was just like barely with any, like she didn't have any energy. She was saying to me like, this is so tough. Like I'm at my wit's end at this point. And bear in mind, she's only 5 centimeters. She still has another 5 to go. So I said to the nurse, like, you know, obviously Caitlin wants to do this unmedicated, but is there anything we can do? Is there anything that we can help her with? Thankfully, and it was such a blessing, the hospital that we went to offer a bath.
Oh my goodness. And that was my tip 7, because I did in the room during my contractions. I took quite a few showers, applied, like I took the shower head and applied heat on my thighs and stuff. But that's what I suggest. If you have a hot shower or hot bath, use it in the hospital, because that saved me. This hot bath, it didn't help much with the pain, but it relaxed me, and that's the difference. So the pain was still prevalent, but I could at least relax, and I was so hot in that bath. The midwife, she made that hot. So I was taking the hose and I put it on like ice cold, and I was just putting it all over my hair. You know how those women, you know, they show up to the hospital, full face makeup, their hair's done, and they do these birth videos? I was soaking wet, getting all my hair wet, all my face wet, and I literally just strut across that room, back to my bed. And I was begging to be checked again. This is
I was like running after her with her like gown thing.
He's like, do you want to wear this? I'm
like, am I putting this on you? Am I just holding it?
I don't want anything touching me. So anyway, they finally checked me again, which they weren't supposed to do because they say every 2 hours they check. They don't need to be doing all these checks. But we begged to have them check again, and they told me I was at 9. So this was maybe 2 or 3 hours after my 5.
You went back down. You went back down about 10. Then at about 1 a.m. they put you in the bath.
Yeah.
And then at about 1:30, 2 o'clock, they checked you again and said, okay, you're just at 9.
Yeah, because they had to check me as well to check the baby's heartbeat after being in the hot water.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm at 9 now, and I'm just like, can I just start pushing, you know? I just wanted something to progress. But then, as time progressed, I had the urge to push. Now, if you've been in labor before, you know what this urge to push is. You can't help it. Your legs are quivering. You just want to push. So I was trying not to push. I was just kind of clenching on him. I may have even bit him a few times.
She was doing crazy
stuff. Tell me this later.
We won't get into the details.
We won't go into the details.
Let's just say when you're in severe pain, you do stuff that are just crazy.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
I didn't hold it against her. It's fine.
Yeah. So he was just holding me, rocking me back and forth. That's another tip I will give, is do a rocking motion. This is tip number 8. It's nice to just, when you're at the peak of these pains, to just rock with someone and just kind of let your body go and relax. So that's another tip. But anyway, we're doing that. I was biting at him. I was like probably ripping his bun.
My hair, yeah.
And anyway, then finally we begged about 45 minutes later, can you please check me again? I'm having the urge to push. And she's like, no, I really shouldn't. I told you every 2 hours. And we said, please. And I'm at 9.5 centimeters. And I told them I really at this point cannot fight the urge any longer to push. It's like if you had a mosquito bite and you just want to scratch it. There's sometimes you just have to scratch it. You know you shouldn't scratch it, but you do. So anyway, I asked for permission because I fought it for so long. I'm shaking. Like, I'm really shaking. Bad. So finally they said, you know what? You're just about there. Just start pushing. So I'm just standing there pushing. And then I'm squatting and pushing. I'm not even lying down ready to give birth yet, but I'm just kind of giving in to pushing, and then
fighting against the contraction.
Which it feels so good. Once you get to the pushing stage during an unmedicated birth, the pushing just doesn't even hurt. The contractions are so painful, it actually feels relieving to finally push. So finally they checked me after a good maybe 30 minutes of these pushes, and I'm ready to begin actual pushing, which was such a success and relief. And
that was probably around 2:30, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And then Sophie was born at 7:29. So Caitlin probably did a solid 4.5 hours of pushing every contraction.
Now let me explain. This is a nice thing about unmedicated birth.
This is where the story gets crazy.
This is where it gets crazy, but this is nice because with an unmedicated birth, you don't have to be told when to push. You know when to push, and you can just, and you want to push. It feels relieving and it feels good. That sounds weird to say, but it feels really good to push. So anyway, because Cameron was such a good birth partner, he's acting like I'm squatting at the gym. He's like, go, 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 go. You come on, you go. You go, push. So he's an amazing birth partner, right? I know when my contractions are. So the woman just leaves. We are on our own pushing. And bear in mind, we didn't have a doctor. Again, it was just
it was like 2 midwives and like 2 nurses.
2 midwives, 2 nurses. They're not even in the room.
They're taking shifts with each other. They weren't even all there. They were just like. Actually, let me add some details because this is where Caitlin's memory gets a bit blurry. So she starts to push, right? And one of the midwives comes up to me and says, "It's actually our lunchtime now, so we're gonna go get lunch."
As if your lunch is more important.
She's fine to be like just pushing while we're not here. Like it's gonna be a while. Because they checked her and they knew that Sophie's head wasn't coming down or anything yet. So they said it's going to be a while. Keep an eye on the monitor. If anything goes wrong with the monitor, if anything's wrong with your wife, come get us. We'll just be down the corridor. We're just having some food. We'll be back in about an hour. So I'm like, what? So I'm like trying to act chill, you know. Like so obviously, again, another tip for the partners, for the husbands, be calm. Be as calm as possible because your energy really reflects onto your wife.
Yes.
Or onto your partner. for me, it was so important for me to stay as calm as possible.
And optimistic.
And yeah, just positive. It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine, you know, and just help from that side of things. So anyway, so for me, I was trying to stay as cool as a cucumber as possible. So when she said to me, oh, we'll be back in about an hour, I didn't want to let Caitlin know at all what was going on. So I was just like, oh yeah, they're just going to go have something to eat. They'll be back in a little while.
Like they said, you're fine. So I'm just...
Really, I was freaking out in my head. But anyway. So yeah, like Caitlin was saying, I mean, I feel like from my experiences in the gym, like I just kind of knew what it took to motivate someone to kind of push their physical boundary. So I kind of knew what it took to kind of like push someone when they're being physically challenged. So I feel like that was a good help for me when I was trying to help you through your contractions and help you to push and help you stay motivated and get all the way through them. But yeah, like Caitlin said, like the nurses were just like, wow, you guys are an amazing team. We don't need to be here. And they just like disappeared. Like they went and got lunch. Then they came back. Then like every now and then one would come in and kind of just check the monitor, check Caitlin and leave again. I would say Caitlin started officially pushing around 3 a.m., maybe a little bit earlier. Between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., we were pretty much on our own.
Yeah, that's
like, no joke. And like Caitlin always says this, we could have been at home. Other than the monitors that are obviously so important, like Caitlin was unmedicated. It was just the two of us. She was in a bed. I was next to the bed. We might as well have been in our bedroom, honestly.
If any of you are from Spain and you need a doula, call him over.
I ain't no doula. Anyway.
He's amazing though.
So finally around 7-ish, or maybe a little bit earlier, I think it was probably about 6:30.
Yeah, it was.
They said, okay, they came in and checked her another time and said, okay, we can feel, I guess they explained from what I can remember, there's like 3 parts of the birth canal. And they said that Sophie was in the second. So she just had the final part. So they're like, okay, like now is the time.
Oh my goodness. And I'm pushing with all my might. I had no sleep. I had barely any energy. So I'm pushing and pushing and pushing.
Caitlin was like so dead.
Oh, I was.
I have to say, before we even get into this part, my love and appreciation and just admiration for Caitlin went, like through the roof isn't even close to the right statement. But for the whole experience, but that last hour, I knew how tired she was. I knew how much she had given it. And to then see her go just above and beyond expectations was one of the most incredible things I've ever experienced. Like, Caitlin was so strong.
Thank
so
you.
Like just anyway, so
he's so nice. He really helped me so much because it got to a point I was pushing and pushing and pushing, and I had to wait for a couple contractions to really gather enough energy and momentum to actually push for a long period of time. And it got scary because our daughter's head kept kind of, coming to the surface and then going back in quite a few times, but her heart rate never, she's just such a strong little girl.
I don't know the exact words, we probably should have Googled this, but from the Spanish what they were saying, I think it's like crown and retreat. Okay. So her head kept crowning, like her head started to come out, but then once the contraction stopped, she'd go back in.
I just didn't have enough for that last bit. And I knew Cameron was getting discouraged, even though he's being positive. I could tell he was like, oh my goodness, honey, come on, push. And there was one point I had to ask the midwife and Cameron, I said, be honest with me, is this doing anything, or do I need something else? And they were so kind. They were like, come on, push a little bit harder. You're almost there. And that helped me. So I waited again for a couple contractions to kind of gain momentum.
I just want to throw in there that like this whole crowning and retreating thing that was happening for like a good 45 minutes. Like they kept saying, she's here. And then Sophie would go back in. And then it was so, like it went on for so long.
And I was trying all these positions. If you're going unmedicated, you have the opportunity to change up positions. It was like Ariana Grande positions, okay? I was squatting while standing, then I was squatting on the bed, then I was changing all my positions to get the best push that I could, and all pushes helped, So finally at the end, I was kind of gathering more motivation and momentum, and I ended on my back. And I was pushing as hard as I could. The veins were popping out of my head. Like literally, it was excruciating. And they talk about that ring of fire. I felt the ring of fire when she was crowning. So anyway, I finally pushed her out. And what was nice is before I pushed her out, the midwife said, would you like to grab your daughter underneath her armpits once the midwife got most of her out? Would you like to grab her and bring her out to your chest? And that was the neatest thing I could ever experience in my life. I've never heard of someone doing that, or at least they hadn't shared it in anything I've heard.
We've never heard that before.
So I picked her up, and it was the most relieving thing and most amazing feeling in the world to be out of pain and then to be holding your creation. It was just the neatest thing.
I'll never
And
forget it.
oh my goodness.
We literally, the boat, like Caitlin lifted her onto her chest, and I just remember we both looked at each other and we both just started bawling.
It
was
was
just
incredible.
the most surreal
Even though I was
moment.
exhausted, I just remember being so present and thinking, this is my little girl. And then it was amazing because we decided to do delayed clamping so that she could receive all the nutrients and iron and that last bit of blood to her system, I guess, before Cameron cut. And then they went to go stitch me, and to distract me from my stitching, they put Sophie on me to start breastfeeding, and she latched right away. And I just remember her comforting me when they were stitching me up and stuff, and it was just amazing. It was like everything is worth it what you go through. And I know that we are amazing as women and we're powerful, and if you desire to do an unmedicated birth, you can do it, because I had contractions from 1 a.m. on the 23rd in the morning until the 24th at 7:30 a.m. And they were so strong and so painful. And I could do it for that long with no rest. So I know it's possible. I just do. And I'm hoping my next birth
will be easier, yeah.
But it's definitely possible.
All I'll add to that, if there's anything to add, is that it's very hard. So be prepared.
Yes, it's not easy.
Possible.
Exactly. Possible. And as long as you have a good birth partner to motivate you, and you focus on your breathing, and you use some techniques that help relieve you from pain or distract you from pain, I know that you can do it. So anyway, we should bring over Sophie to show the blessing that came from this incredible birth experience. So that's the story, how this little girl came to this world. Huh, Sophie? She's so sleepy today. Anyway, that's our story. Thanks for listening to it. It was an incredible experience to go through.
One we'll never forget.
And as painful as it is, you do it over and over again because this is amazing. So anyway, she's blowing bubbles for you guys.
Anyway, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as always. Please share this video with anyone who you think this could be helpful to.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.